Business Daily right here on Trust Television. And of course, we go into our discussion straight away. Today, we're looking at the issue around minimum wage again. The labor is demanding, well, it is rumored that they are demanding for 1 million naira minimum wage. We're looking at this, of course, compare this, what this means with, for government expenditure. This demand, a huge demand from labor. What does it mean for government expenditure going forward, especially in 2024? That has been projected that wage increases certainly will increase government expenditure. I have joining me in the studio Baba Yusuf. Is a strategist, policy analyst, Group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company Limited. Glad to have you on Business Daily.
Thank you for having me, Yusuf.
All right, before we go into the discussion for today, let's look at the history of minimum wage from the 1980 to date. Now, we have them in graphics form there for you to see how it has grown from 1981 to date. In 1981, the minimum wage in Nigeria was 125 naira. If you quantify that against the US dollar, that is $195 there. If you look at it, naira at the time, it was stronger than US dollar. In 1989-90, it moved to 250 naira, and then that is at the point where naira, the depreciation began. Of course, don't forget the structural adjustment program that actually affect the value of naira at the time. In 1998 to 1999, before we ushered in, into the democracy that we are currently enjoying, the minimum wage at the time was 3,000 naira. Of course, that's $32. I mean, it is a continuous decline there. In 2000, 2001, it moved to 5,500, and of course, 7,500 as well, between 5,500 and 7,500. At this point, Naira firmed up a little to 49 and of course $67 there for Nigeria minimum wage. In 2011, it moved to 18,000 naira. That is $117 US for Nigeria workers at the time. That is per month. In 2018 as well, it was moved to 30,000 naira by the former President Muhammadu Buhari, and that is around 98,000 naira. Of course, that remain at that amount, $30,000 naira. I beg your pardon. If you look at 30,000 naira in 2023 by the official exchange rate, that's $65. If you look at it in terms of the black market rate, that is $44. But currently in 2024, that has dropped down now to about $20. I mean, there for parallel market rate, and of course $21 for black market rate. Now let's put this now into proper perspectives. Now, Baba Yusuf, you've seen the continuous decline in the value of naira, and of course the minimum wage. I mean, that has probably eroded the purchasing power of many workers from 1981 till date. What do you make of this?
Well, honestly, it's just unfortunate that the trajectory of the value of our money vis-a-vis the economy, vis-a-vis all the parameters and indices, in practical terms, macroeconomics, is declining without any clear, sure-footed, front-facing trajectory. The employees of the federal government, and not just state, federal, and local government, but importantly also the employees of the organized labor, which includes the private sector. And also, interestingly, we have these conversations most of the time, and I hear a very loud silence with regards to about 85% of our workforce, and that is the informal sector. While you are reeling out these numbers, obviously there are the numbers that have to do with the minimum wage in the formal sector, particularly, especially the public sector. But then minimum wage should be a conversation that should be all-encompassing with regards to our employees, employment framework entirely, public, private, formal and informal sector. These, I will say, are the indicators of how bad it is, because if you go to the informal sector, there are still people like the domestic staff, and other staff that are earning, less than 10,000 in some states. If you look at this, your analysis, at the graphics you show us, imagine somebody earning $10 or less than $10 a month as a living wage. So the cost, and with the rising cost of living, which is a global issue, albeit it is one of the big impacts is in Nigeria as far as we are concerned, and the trajectory is not looking good, is what I think brings this conversation to the table that we are discussing today. The federal government is engaging. We expect to see clarity, not just with regards to the optics of conversation. We hope the outcome will be in the overall interest, of hardworking Nigerians. They deserve better.
Absolutely. You made mention of the current, based on the statistics that we actually shown there, you say that it's a global issue. It looked like Nigerian leaders are hiding under this global issue and allow things to continue to deteriorate.
It has become a culture, a corporate culture in Nigeria to continue looking for excuses. I mentioned the global reality because that is what it is. We shouldn't discount realities. As a strategist, recognizing the global issues and now bringing it home to domesticate it or juxtapose it with your local issues is the first step in the right direction to solving your problem. However, that should not become an umbrella to make the excuses, but as a factor to face your reality. If you are dealing with your national issues and you decide to insulate yourself from the global realities, then you are working a theory that will not work. That being said, the question is, have we complicated our issues vis-a-vis the global realities in the last years? And that is the truth. The answer is a big yes. We have further complicated our issues. I hear a lot of people making excuses to say, the cost of living in Nigeria is not as bad as in country A, country B. But then the country A and country B, if you want to do peer review mechanism, you want to do a comparative analysis.
Absolutely.
Are the other economic indices the same? Do they have the same resource availability? Do they have the same income? Do they have the same framework of resources and what comes to us in terms of income and all that? Before you now say things should be, are you excusing to say things should be the same? I don't believe so. I think we should contextualize issues. I think that's the word. To contextualize, while you look at the global issues, contextualize it to your own domestic affairs, including the formulation of policies, whether they are economic, social, or political. And that has been the bane of development in Nigeria. While we look at the global issues, and while we try to emulate the issues that are outside the country, we should also look at our inherent issues and find a way to domesticate these issues and address our peculiarities to have long-term, long-lasting solutions.
Indeed. Talking about this, still staying with this global issue, Naira within the past 7-8 months or thereabout has lost about 60% in terms of value. Yeah. And if you compare this to the US dollar, it's not the same. We're talking about the global issue, but the US dollar continues to get stronger, the pound sterling continues to get stronger, and the euro continues to get stronger. Other currencies, even in Africa here, are getting stronger against the US, against the Naira.
Well, it's a function of our strategy. What is our economic strategy in the last 10 years, Yusuf? Do we have a strategy that is forward-thinking? Do we have strategies that are well thought out? Have we reviewed those strategies vis-a-vis the changing trends? What were the outlooks at the time the strategies were formulated, and what is this current government doing vis-a-vis the lessons learned from previous administrations, especially the last 8 years of the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari? Have we really learned lessons to bring on board those lessons in trying to formulate a better way forward for Nigeria? That is the issue. So while I agree that policy has a timeline or an incubation period in order to yield results, as a policy analyst and as a strategy, I also believe that we should have what I call a traction and a trajectory that will show us we are moving in the right direction. And in that, one of the key critical success factors is for us to have what you call the quick wins, for us to see that we are moving forward in the right direction with the low-hanging fruits, outcomes coming out of it. The Naira that is free-falling, obviously, I may sound like a broken record, but I think it's the right thing for us to do so that we speak truth to power. I keep on saying that the way forward is for us to have an alignment of fiscal policy, monetary policy, and the fiscal discipline. That fiscal discipline leg has been really
that is where
left,
we are lacking,
on the table, and we think we can continue deceiving ourselves that we formulate all manner of monetary policies and fiscal policies without bringing into consideration the critical, what I call adhesive between monetary and fiscal policy to make it work. The critical ingredient, if you like, is lacking. We must have that in place. Otherwise, Naira will continue free falling. It's a sad thing, but that is our reality. I wonder what will happen in the next 6-7 months unless those critical steps are taken into consideration. Our Naira, the value of our Naira and the purchasing power of Nigerians will continue to erode with disastrous consequences.
Indeed, very, very worrisome there for Nigerians and indeed the government as well. Let's stay with the issue of minimum wage now. The committee already has been set up by the president. What do you think should be their immediate responsibility if you are to advise them now? Labour is demanding for 1 million naira minimum wage. What is the implication of this demand?
Well, I don't have a problem with
do you think this will put pressure on the committee as well? I
don't have a problem with the demand or with the numbers of 1 million naira placed by the Labour Union. I reckon is a negotiation number put on the table. It's an indication of how the minimum should be, from the Labour perspective. I will expect a robust, honest conversation, a difference from what has happened in the past. Yusuf, we have had engagements, especially in the last couple of years with the Labour unions. You mentioned the 2018-2019 30,000 review. The question is how many of the arms of government or the tiers of government have actually owned up to those agreements. Most of the states, we hear as of end of last year, the reports that came out, almost 20 states we are not paying the minimum wage 4 years after the fact that this was agreed. In the last 6 months, the new administration also brought and agreed with the Labour a short-term intervention of additional 35,000 to make it a wholesome 65,000 for 6 months as an intervention, depending when an overall robust review will take place. That also has not been executed, so to speak, especially by the state governments. And even at the federal level, I read on the news 2-3 days ago speculations about some institutions of government have not collected January salary. So I hope there will be honest conversations between the Labour and the government to fashion a way forward based on realities and projections. Because I also, it was on the news that the Honorable Minister of Information and National Orientation mentioned that the federal government intended to spend about 24.66 trillion naira on salaries, between 2024 to 2026,
yes.
Based on analysis of the 2024 to 2026 fiscal framework. The question is, have they contemplated or have they factored a number that will be agreed to now, that the conversation is going on, or is this projection based on the 30,000 naira minimum wage? These are very critical numbers that should be put in place for planning purposes and for us to work with the realities, because we know the inflation is galloping, hovering around 30%. I was in an international forum about a couple of days ago. The numbers will likely, inflation is going to increase on towards Q3 of 2024, unless some critical steps are taken by this government with regards to production, with regards to security, and hedging of corruption and all that.
Absolutely.
Things will continue to go bad. And if so, these numbers, will they be realistic in terms of the ongoing negotiations? And then if so, what will be the outcome in terms of impact if the agreements happen? Will the states that are not paying 30,000 as of today be able to pay the agreed minimum wage? So a lot of black spots that need to be addressed by this very robust committee, by the way, headed by the Vice President. I hope the Vice President will be very, firm in trying to ensure that what is agreed to and what is done is what will be playing out.
Absolutely, and I hope that we get it done properly and, of course, implement it as well. You made mention of 24.66 trillion naira for overheads and, of course, other expenditure. I was worried that this is more like a continuation of the culture of high overhead at the expense of high fiscal deficit.
Well, it's a reality that we need to deal with also. It's a function of, like I said, strategy and reality. When you formulate your strategies based on some for want of a better phrase, theoretical or grandiose considerations, you keep on running into this issues. We are not practical, we are not pragmatic, Yusuf, in our analysis, in our planning. We have a lot of eggheads, a lot of brilliant people in Nigeria. Albeit we need to be more circumspect in looking at our realities as Nigeria and having a homegrown, domesticated strategy and framework. That is the only way we can be able to achieve those and have the right priorities, Yusuf. What are our national priorities? It is the national priorities will determine allocation of resources. For example, the Bureau for Public Service Reforms, the head of the Bureau for Federal Service Reform, Ledger Arabi, about a year or so, told Nigerians that the total number of public servants or civil servants is less than 1 million. All right? And if that is the case...
That's federal government workers.
Federal government workers. And you now come and add the state government workers, and you have to add the private sector workers and all that. What are the issues with regards to the overhead being that high vis-a-vis? Don't forget that the deficit is not just a function of overhead. Let's be fair to the civil servants. It's a function of this burgeoning and skyrocketing cost of debt servicing. We've been incurring all manner of debts. You hear all this slime coming out of the CBN and other things. These are factors that are actually the actual issues, that are affecting the economy. But that being said, let us first of all deal with what is right in terms of what should go to these civil servants, and then come back and deal with efficiencies and how the value will be extracted from the civil servants. Because we cannot demand from people who are underpaid and underserved excellence and quality. We cannot demand from people who are underpaid and underserved that they should not be corrupt and they should live above board. While the political class are living large, for want of a better word, as if they are living in another capsule from the reality of Nigerians. After all, we all go to the same markets, the same hospitals, and our children go to the same schools. You have the armed forces buying their kit from the meager resources they have, their shoes, their uniforms for themselves. You have civil servants also buying their resources, having to augment with all manner of debt to go to work. So you need to be very practical with this, and we need to deal with priorities and then have pragmatic leadership from the front, in terms of also shedding their weight in terms of cost of governance, so that those numbers will balance with the recurrent expenditure with regards to overhead costs. Because we try to bring a lot of numbers to justify that overhead cost is too high, while we have numbers that are not supposed to be even in our budget in the first place.
Indeed, the overhead cost is too high, and of course with the new minimum wage expected to begin by April 1st, I think that is even going to go more higher. Now, as we begin to wrap up now, at this point, how do you want government to, by way of raising more revenue? Because you talked about our debt, what we are spending on debt servicing, and of course government is even trying to see how they can even take more debt as well. So as a way of opening up the revenue for government, I mean spreading different sources of income now, what do you think government should do at this point? Raising taxes or expanding the net?
My advice is in twofold. First of all, the federal government, and second, the state government. I won't talk about the local government because the state governments have swallowed the local governments. That is the fact. For the federal government, the way forward is to deal with the fundamental issues. One, to immediately stop leakages in a tangible, radical way. There's a lot of wastages going on at the top. We see the excesses of government functionaries. We see the unnecessary demand by people that are supposed to be servants of the public, behaving like lords of the public. We need to see that immediately. Cost of governance should be slashed. I'm one voice among millions that are saying that it's a no-brainer. So you block leakages, you stop wastages, and you deal with corruption. The humongous amount of millions of dollars that we are hearing, for example, just in the case of the CBN, you hear the kind of money. The question is, where are the monies? The principal actors in this particular instance are still existing, they are still living. So there must be proactiveness from and this goes beyond just the executive, including the judiciary, to expedite action to bring back our money that have been stolen and plundered, to block this, deficit. In terms of revenue generation, the petroleum, we have a budget that projected 1 point something million barrel per day, but beyond that, the other revenue income streams needs to be dealt with in terms of agriculture, but then that goes to dealing with insecurity and other factors going forward. For the state governments, I'm sorry, they need to be very, very practical, very, very serious to show us that they deserve to be governors by taking care of their people based on the mandates and the promises they make for the people.
All right, Baba Yusuf, strategist, policy analyst, group CEO, Global Investment and Trade Company. I'm most thanking you for your time on Business Daily.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate your contributions.
Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap today on the show. Thanks for watching. I am Yusuf Akogu.